This right here is the next move. We've got formwork set up for a 3x3 storage shed slab, and we've just run a new downpipe with a slight fall into a sump against the old shed next door. That fall means any water off this roof drains away properly and prevents future headaches. And the future slab is the key to unlocking this workshop. And at the moment, I can't even use half my machines properly. The thickness is buried, the floor's stacked. Every build requires moving 10 things just to start one task. And that kills momentum. So before I can build the back wall, I have to clear the battlefield. This is the reality of building something from scratch. It's not just framing walls and making it look good, it's solving problems in the right order. And right now, the only way I can properly work in this space is by building that storage shed out the back. Just like in the previous episode, I'm moving everything away from this back wall, so I've actually got room to work. There's no point trying to cut studs and assemble a frame when you're boxed in on every side. If I want this build to go smoothly, I need space. Space to measure properly, space to cut safely, and space to assemble the wall square. The first step is measuring the exact width between the two side walls that were previously installed. That measurement determines everything: the length of the bottom plate, the top plate, and the spacing of the studs. Once I've got that width, I can transfer it onto the plates and start marking out my stud positions. I'll keep the stud spacing consistent with the rest of the workshop so everything lines up properly when it comes time to clad it. I'll also allow for any tolerance so the frame can slide into position without binding, but still sit tight once it's fixed off. With that sorted, it's time to cut the plates to length and start assembling the frame. The challenge here is to get the wall sitting nice and plumb, and as snug as possible between existing frames. In reality, there's almost always a little bit of variance in the measurements. Nothing in construction is ever perfectly square or perfectly straight, especially when you're tying new work into something that's already been built. For anyone wondering why I'm building this wall a little differently, I'm actually installing the studs in situ using pocket hole joinery. Normally you'd assemble a full wall frame on the ground and then lift it into position, but in my case, space inside the shed is pretty limited. I wouldn't be able to drag a fully assembled wall through the front door anyway, so this method works much better for the situation I'm in. Using pocket holes lets me fix each stud directly between the top and bottom plates once they're in position. I just mark out my stud locations on both plates, cut each stud to the correct height, and then fix them in place one by one. I'm also using a circular saw hooked up to a vacuum, which helps keep the dust down while I'm working inside the shop. It might not be the traditional way to frame a wall, but in a tight space like this, it's a really practical solution. At this point, I'm just installing the last couple of studs to complete the frame. Because I'm fixing everything together with pocket holes, you do have to be a little bit careful when installing each stud. When the screw first bites, it has a tendency to pull the timber slightly, so the trick is to hold the stud firmly against your layout mark while you're driving the screw. I usually hold the stud with one hand, keep it lined up with the mark on the plate, and slowly drive the pocket hole screw until you feel it grab, and pull the stud in tight. Once it pulls tight, the stud locks into position nicely. With the studs and the top plate in place, the frame really starts to take shape. After that, I start marking out for the noggins. Just like the other walls in the workshop, I install the noggins roughly halfway up the frame. These serve two main purposes. They stiffen up the wall frame and also give extra fixing points later on when it comes time to install cladding. Once they're cut to size, it's just a matter of fitting them in between the studs and fixing them off. It's a small detail, but noggins make a big difference to the overall rigidity of the wall. And once the noggins are in, this wall frame is basically complete. While I continue to install the final noggins here, it's probably a good time to talk about what this back wall is actually going to become in the workshop. My plan is for this wall to act as a sort of backdrop area for assembly and filming. I'd like to keep this section of the workshop fairly clean and uncluttered, more decorative than storage. One idea I have is to install a light box somewhere along this wall with a Samurai Joinery logo illuminated, so when I'm filming builds or assembling furniture, this becomes a visual backdrop. I think that it'll give the workshop a bit of identity and make the videos feel more intentional rather than just working in a random shed. I might still tuck a couple of machines on carts into the corner here. Things like the thicknesser or other tools that only get used occasionally. But overall, I want this wall to stay fairly open so the workshop still feels calm and organised. Now that the frame is fully assembled in place, the next step is fixing it in permanently. Just like I've done with the other walls in the workshop, I start by drilling the holes for the masonry anchors through the bottom plate and into the concrete slab. After drilling, I vacuum out the holes to remove the concrete dust. Cleaning the holes helps the masonry screws bite properly and gives a much stronger fixing. Before the wall gets fixed down, I also place a strip of DPC under the bottom plate. That acts as a damp-proof course and helps prevent any moisture from the slab being drawn up into the timber. Once it's in place, the wall can be fixed down with masonry screws through the bottom plate. Then to tie everything together, I run screws through the end studs into the existing side walls, 3 screws in each stud, one at the top, the middle and one at the bottom. That locks the back wall into the rest of the structure and makes the whole frame feel a lot more solid. One other thing I do here is tie the middle of the frame back into the steel purlin of the main shed structure. I use a small angle bracket and a couple of screws to connect the wall frame to the purlin. That extra fixing point stiffens up the wall nicely and stops it from having any chance of moving or leaning. Once the brackets are in place, the wall becomes properly tied to the shed frame and everything feels a lot more solid. And with that, the back wall is finally complete. Meanwhile, there's some good progress happening on the storage shed slab. We've had the concrete mixed materials delivered, sand, aggregate and cement, ready for the slab pour. The formwork is now in position behind the workshop where the storage shed will eventually sit. So the night before the pour, I spent some time prepping the formwork. That involves staking the form down securely, levelling everything up, and digging a trench around the inside perimeter of the form. That trench helps lock in the slab into the ground once the concrete is poured, giving it a bit more strength around the edges. As you can see, most of this prep work was done in the rain. I wanted to get everything ready the night before so the actual pour day would run as smoothly as possible. Concrete pours always go a lot better when the preparation is done properly beforehand. So with the formwork prepared and the materials on site, everything is now ready for the slab pour. And once this slab is poured, we'll finally be able to get the storage shed up and start clearing the clutter out of the main workshop. This last job for the night, digging out this trench around the inside perimeter of the slab, turned out to be a bit more physical than I expected. The ground here has a lot of old fill from previous construction work, so underneath the surface there's bricks, stones and all sorts of leftover building materials. So digging through it was almost like digging through rock. But the trench is important because once the concrete goes in, it really helps lock in the slab into the ground and stop it from shifting over time. By the time I finished this, I was definitely feeling it. So hopefully I don't wake up too sore for the pour day tomorrow. That's it for this episode. In the next one, we'll be pouring the slab and getting this storage shed one step closer to reality. One step at a time, this is how Samurai Joinery is built. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.